I mean, I'm pretty happy with the results because Fnatic fans literally got everything they wanted. Like, I mean, that's the reason why. Like, I see the fans and the people that got all the blame were Yamato. You know, we need a better coach. They said Hilly's just inting way too much. Like, he's just washed at this point. And Upset is bad because of his history, because players around him played bad, so he's now bad. Well, congratulations. This is what it looks like when Upset's not on the team to carry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the newest episode of Power Spike presented by Last Free Nation. It's your boy dGon here with Monte and Dom to talk about everything in the happening across the world of League. And guys, it's week 3, I think, of the LCS, but also playoff time for LEC, and also LPL just came back from an extended break. We had a lot of things to discuss here. How are you doing this week here, Monte?
I'm doing great. Watching some really good League of Legends from around the world, and also LCS as usual. I got to see some really good play from JDG. That was very exciting. Got to see a Humble Life upset over T1. Got to see Gen G just absolutely dominate D+. These were all very exciting. And we got to see Fnatic and Excel eliminated, something that absolutely no person on Earth predicted heading into LEC, which is honestly a validation of the format. Very exciting. Now we get to get rid of the 2 worst teams in the league. I'm really, really pumped for the next couple of weeks of LEC as we get to see best of 3s and then best of 5s. Should be really fun.
Yeah, no one in their right mind would have thought that. Astralis made playoffs. They made playoffs. All right, Astralis, way to go, baby. Tom, how was your week, man?
That was pretty good. I obviously lost power for like multiple days.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Yeah, I had like, it was pretty rough because, I mean, I'm used, like, I lived in Miami, right? So Miami, you have hurricanes pretty frequently. Like, every couple years, you're going to have some hurricane knock out your power. But the difference is I've lost power for 3.5 weeks before in Miami. So I've really went through that before. But it's a completely different game when you're warm compared to, like, when you're actually freezing. Because the temperatures were like -1 degrees Celsius. That's where we're at. So, like 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And when you're just in that for like 2 or 3 days, you just get cold to like your core. Like it's a different type of, it's just suffering. Like that's literally what it is. That was the best way. Like you're hungry. Like you get so cold, you just get a headache. Like you're fucking like bored. I mean, it was just suffering for like a couple days. So it was good.
What'd you do? I'm curious what
excited.
you did. What did you do with your time?
I just read books.
Nice.
I read a lot, so I just read. I lost power for like 50 hours. I just read 2 books, and I mean the thing is, like, you don't have light from the outside, and we weren't prepared with like lanterns and stuff. Like when I was in Miami, I would have lanterns, like the Coleman lanterns. So whenever you lose power, you get your lantern, and you're fine. But we had no lanterns or anything, and we didn't want to use our phone battery for like a flashlight. So it was kind of like you read during the time where like the sun is up, and then when the sun goes down, you just like lay in bed with your eyes closed for 12 hours, just under the blankets, trying not to fucking freeze to death.
That was the human condition prior to electricity. Thank God we live when we do now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks for that reminder, Monte.
I'm grateful that we live when we do now, so I don't have to just lie in bed for 12 hours.
Yeah, I mean, well, for Monte, he remembers when he was a kid, and it was tough back then. So
I'm like 5 years older than you.
Less than that, I think it's like 4.
I like how Dom, pretends to be the boomer when it's good for him, and then whenever I need to be the boomer in comparison to him, he just throws me straight under the bus.
Yeah, why do you think I'm here? This is literally the only reason, so I can feel young for once. It's therapy for me.
Well, as tough of a week it was for Dom, it was also a tough week in the LCS, not because of the matches that were happening on screen, but if you're TSM or a TSM fan or Doublelift or a Doublelift fan or on the LCS side and with LeTigress. So for context, everyone, there was a segment done. As we know, LCS is experimenting with content and segments, and we applauded them for that and trying things, and we're interested to see what they're going to do in week 2. And they had a lot of really good week 2 content. One of the pieces that they did was a monologue by LeTigress about TSM and Doublelift, and obviously those two pretty interlinked post-CLG career. Doublelift went on and did some great things with the Rift, won a lot of championships, dominant, blah, blah, left, and then came back, and then left again with, under very auspicious circumstances with a legal proceeding happening about harassment and the organization not being a safe workplace. So there was a lot of that. They covered that on the broadcast and tried to make light of it and also give historical background on it to heighten the stakes of the matchup now with Doublelift versus TSM and how there might be some bad blood. And then we toss it to the casters to get into the game. That was the intent. That's not how it came off. And it lit up all across LCS Twitter, the League of Legends Twitter, the Reddit. It was everywhere. And people didn't like the way it was delivered. It felt like it didn't belong in the broadcast. It felt like there's personal attacks. Doublelift and Lena have also come out and stated some things. TSM has stated that they're in talks with the LCS on their subreddit. It has lit up a lot of different opinions. So I wanted to start there, as that was one of the big things in a relatively normal week of the LCS. Everyone, all the favorites won except CLG losing no mortals in the very last game. That seemed to be the news here, Dom. So I wanted to start with you and get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a strange segment. Also, I just was conveniently like on the broadcast during that. Like, they just had my face in the corner from like the videos of me like shitting on TSM. So it's like, fuck, am I like complicit in this stuff? Like, it made me feel a little bit awkward.
You were the ghostwriter of that segment.
Yeah,
right?
I was the ghostwriter. I'm like, shit, bro. If they needed somebody to flame, like, I'm already the bad guy. I'll just hop on and flame TSM for free. So look, this is how I view things. If you're against, from an unbiased perspective, if you're against TSM, you can do no wrong. So I think it was a great job by LCS. I think it was a perfect segment. I think they should make it a weekly thing, maybe even extrapolate it to be an hour-long, talk show, perhaps. I mean, I'm down for all of this. So I really like it.
I think they should release the Reginald report, which is the report that law firm generated. That they've never released. Actually, they just said he didn't disparage any protected classes. And so he wasn't
racist. He wasn't racist in who he was like verbally abusing. He was an equal rights abuser. He abused everyone. It's like, damn, like, I guess
he's an equal opportunity asshole, as he is known.
Yeah.
And so that is one way to take it. For me, obviously, I think that the backlash from this has just been super, super strong. And, Gabby put out an apology about that, acknowledging they missed the mark. The classic Riot's face. They missed the mark, but also that she is very sorry and apologized to anyone that she offended in the process. And then also said, hey, but also I don't deserve all these threats and hate mail and all this stuff on me and on my life, which I agree. I think two things can be true. You can apologize for this, and also you don't deserve that for being a talent, being creative, and doing your job where you can't really put that.
You can't really put that in the apology. It just makes it look like you have a victim complex. It's like it's not good to have in the apology in general. You just have to like apologize, and you just have to accept that, like, obviously no one is condoning people sending you death threats, right? Like, that is not what the general public is condoning. It's just that comes with the territory of when you're getting hated on by the internet. Like, it's just what it is.
And also that's part of being a public figure, unfortunately. And also, you can put that into your statement, but literally, which anonymous douchebag who's sending you hate comments and death threats was ever deterred by you saying, please don't do that? Just makes you look vulnerable. It probably increases the number.
Yeah, I would say it increases, at least from my angle. Like, I mean, I never really address like death threats that people send me. I only I only show them if it's linked to their like actual name normally, because I'm like, oh, look, I got a death threat. Oh, just post their name. It's like, yeah, I mean, you sent me that from your Twitter account. Like, I didn't know that was your real name, bro. That could have been an alias. And then, you kind of make people delete their accounts pretty quick when they go over like that.
Yeah, people are like, what? Your name's not really Dom?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was the context that was there. And I just, again, I support Gabby as like, a common professional. She and I came up together in the amateur ranks, and she, in my opinion, deserved the spot that she has, and does provide positivity, energy, and a different look on the broadcast. Those are things that she does provide. But one of us on here has a different opinion on that. And that's going to be our first segment of the episode.
And I am not that person. Please do not ban me from coaching me again. I do not condone anything Mountain T's about to say. I have my own opinions. If it doesn't come out of my mouth, it's not my opinion. All right, there we go.
All right, so to dive into our first episode, let's give it on over to the Overlord of Chaos. It's tough to swallow with Monte.
All right, guys. So I do feel for LeTigress on this one, because you have to remember that even though she wrote this segment, all of this, as she says, was, by the production taken into account. It was worked on collaboratively together, approved. It had to go through all of these various different channels in order to appear on the broadcast. So it wasn't just out of one person's mouth. But if we're just going to be real right now about the state of the LCS broadcast, I have to say that LeTigress really needs to step it up. She has now been on this broadcast for literally years, and she has committed the cardinal sin of being in entertainment, which is that she is boring. And she has had many opportunities to find a specific niche, to find a specific skill set within the overall LCS broadcast, and so far hasn't offered anything unique to the viewing experience. Now, as much as I disliked personally this segment, because not only did it not hype up the rivalry, it trivialized the literal law firm investigation that went into TSM and Reginald, which was a very serious thing that we probably shouldn't be joking about. It also glossed over a lot of Doublelift and Lena's shenanigans when it came to conflict of interest and the very convenient timing of them dropping all of this information after they had left the org, and TSM did not re-sign Doublelift, even though at the time he apparently wanted to go back to the team. So it seemed like it came out of spite in the first place. But thirdly, none of the players, nor coaches, nor anybody had anything to do with this rivalry. So you can't hype it up in that same way. I don't think Doublelift has any beef with the current roster of TSM. A better storyline is always to go with TSM having had Doublelift, all of his experiences there, and then what it means for him to play with this against this organization that he was part of for years. But the thing about LeTigress is this moment, I think, as bad as it was, is actually probably a good thing for her as a member of the LCS broadcast. And the reason is, for the first time ever, we're actually talking about her and a segment that she made. And as Oscar Wilde said, the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. And as much as this hurts, and as much as it is honestly like hitting bottom in terms of fan perception of you as a member of the broadcast crew, this is now a really good watershed moment, because people are going to be paying attention to you to reinvent yourself and make yourself a hugely valuable part and a unique part of this LCS broadcast. Frankly, I would have rather if she, instead of apologizing for it, clapped back against Doublelift and Lena, who are weirdly demanding apologies. And I think she could have had a chance here to be a very interesting lightning rod and villain instead of backing off of this point. So I think this is the time right now, because something has to change, because I don't think LeTigress can continue to fulfill this role on the broadcast that is effectively not memorable and not doing anything. And now, time to change yourself as a talent, time to put your flag in the ground and stand up for something. Do it right now.
I think a lot of people forget that those are the same journeys that Dash and Shox had. Shox early on was taking on so much heat and had to sharpen up. It's the same thing with Dash. People didn't accept and love Dash the way that he was loved, especially last year. Last year, one of his great best years of work. And I hope that the team, the LCS production team, and is supportive of not just, damage control and all that stuff, but the growth of talent there. And I hope that she does have that opportunity. I love the fact that you bring that up, Monte, as like a watershed moment to change the career and define it and move it in a new way. Because she is very good. There aren't very many people that work harder than her, and I've known her now before. Like,
what is she very good at? Is my question.
That was my question, dGon. Like, I'm just gonna be real with you, man. Like,
what would you say is her strength?
I think her strength is always being able to find the positivity in something, which is why this was a little out of pocket, right? If you want to find a reason to be, if you're a fan of the LCS, she is one of the #1 fans of the LCS in the front to bring that excitement, to bring people in, to find the reasons to cheer for a team. This was, again, finding a different reason to cheer for a player, because Doublelift is, Doublelift with, not a team, and a little bit out there, and a step in the right direction towards creating that personality like the LEC does towards their monologues. But she has done public speaking. She's done that for such a long time. That felt like it was going to be in her wheelhouse. I just feel like the topic was a little forced. So I hope that they continue to double down on the fact that she can do these types of monologues. She can do these types of speaking, this type of speaking. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate because she's been trying to do so many different things. It feels like the LCS is like, oh, try this, try this, try that, and it's like she's bouncing around so much that she never becomes like a master of either of the areas. Like, is she supposed to be the next host? Because if she was just hosting for the last 3 years, she'd probably be like a much better host if she. Like, because she was doing what, like Friday Night League, she was hosting a little bit, like when Dash was off, and like she would do like a little bit of hosting, then she did a little bit of interviewing, now she does a little bit of casting. She's sometimes on the desk. Like, it just feels like you don't really know where she fits in. And yeah, I feel like that's what the LCS is struggling with. Like, they're moving her around so much that she doesn't end up being like a staple or like a master of any of the different areas.
Yeah, and I think at a certain point you just have to stop agreeing to do all of that. And I agree. Like, I would like to see more of these kind of monologues to drive stories. They're incredibly effective on LEC, and I enjoy them when they happen. But this just didn't feel like it was tonally appropriate for her. She also just wasn't there for a lot of the stuff. Like, what tilted me was she kind of hand waved away the videos from like Game Cribs back in the day, which came out, which like, Dom and I lived through that era, and it was fucking shitty when that came out. And I was appalling the players were being treated that way by Reginald. And I can just tell you guys, literally the camera crew behind Game Cribs told me that they had to remove content from Game Cribs to make it look better because the reality of what they had captured was even worse than what they showed in terms of Reggie's verbal abuse. Right? That was the sanitized version, guys. And to hand wave that away and say like, oh, that's just ancient history. It's like, that shit was fucked up, and Riot never did anything about it, just thought it was hilarious at the time. And now all of a sudden it's a big deal. I was saying it was a big deal when it was happening.
Yeah. I think,
I mean,
that's why
she doesn't know about it. So for her to just dismiss it, I think is shitty.
I think that's why this topic in itself was just not the greatest monologue to take, as you've already hit on before. It's no one on this team, no one on this org, even on the organization side. And as fellow TSM haters, like, look at this club of guys. Actually, I don't know which side you guys are on, but look at this fellow club of TSM haters that have at one point or still do dislike TSM. This org is making changes that I like. The leadership here is different. Chowie being in charge, getting this roster. I like this way, way more than I've liked any other iteration of TSM. And even in the most hate of TSM, you can't shit on an LCS partner org like that, where that just on something that is still a legal matter. So I didn't like the fact that it just kind of got through all the different channels of the production.
Yeah. I don't know. So. The whole situation was weird. I didn't understand like why Lena was like tweeting under it, and like the weird, like, I don't know if she thinks everyone is stupid, but she said, oh, the Sword Art, like Peter Zhang, like stealing money from Sword Art, that was 4 months after I left, where it's like, well, that happened during the fucking year where you were president. So like anyone with two brain cells would be able to rub them together and figure out, oh, like you were the president during the time where all this was happening. So I don't know how somehow Lena is not like complicit in anything that actually happened throughout the entire like time that all these like verbal abuse things were happening. Like, she's the president of a company, she knows verbal abuse is going on, or she just doesn't know. Is she that far removed? Like, I don't know what is going on with her involvement in the organization. I mean, like, how does she get no blame for anything that happened?
It's astounding, isn't it? She was there for 10 years. She lived in the original TSM house in Long Island when a bunch of this stuff and the original clips and stuff, the original content was being made.
For years.
She was Reginald's girlfriend during that time. She was Reginald's girlfriend during the early days of the LCS when all of the Game Cribs crap was happening. She was part of this. She was publicizing it. She thought it was perfectly acceptable. Otherwise, it wouldn't have gone out in terms of video content, right? She's entirely complicit in all of this. And look, I am 100% in support of her coming out and saying, I was complicit in this for many, many years. I now realize it was wrong. And I am going to go to journalists and I am going to go to Riot and I'm going to dump everything to make sure that we clear this up. But instead, she just denies it. And she never went to a journalist. She never back channeled anything in order to try and fix this. Even if you are not in a position, the absolute position of power, you are an executive at the company. And you can, in fact, use alternate means by going to publications, by going to investigative journalists and dumping this news, right? It was never done.
What a mess of a situation. And it's still playing out right now as tweets and replies and all that stuff. Apologies are coming out, but we'll see and keep a close eye on it as we move to week 3 of the LCS. So that was tough to swallow. Now, let's move on over to where monologues have been a hit for quite some time. Yeah, that's right. The LEC, where we have our topic of the Galaxy Brain Club.
Nice segue.
Yeah, I'll give you props for that one.
That was a good one.
Appreciate it. We're going to Galaxy Brain Club where we're discussing another dumpster fire in Fnatic. All right, so here we go. Fnatic, guys. Winter roster, running it back. We like the names that are on here. We're promoting new names. See you later, Hilly. And it has all gone to shit. They have not made playoffs here in the LEC for the first split of 3. It came really fast. They didn't have as much time to gel. There's a lot of excuses. They put out a statement earlier. Even the statement got ridiculed of their apology of not achieving playoffs. Man, it's not good. Where do we go from here, Monte?
I mean, I think it's pretty funny that basically the bar was set so low that all they had to do was come into this last week of play and probably win like 1 game. And instead they just go 0-3, look incredibly pathetic while doing it. But I also think that this is the expectations around Fnatic are to a certain degree kind of rewriting history, if you will, because for a lot of the summer split of last year, it's not like Fnatic was super good. Ever since they assembled this roster that included Humanoid and Razork, there were always, it appeared, communication and synergy issues between these two players. And if it hadn't been for just a spectacular poppy run in summer playoffs from Razork, I don't think that they would have done nearly as well as they did. Like, they certainly overperformed relative to expectations. And at Worlds, we have a rosy view of them because Humanoid was incredible at Worlds. I think he was really in form, but it wasn't until the very end of summer split and until Worlds itself that we saw any kind of glimmers of what this roster was supposed to be. And even then, it always appeared that when Razork was doing well, Humanoid couldn't actually get up to form, and the vice versa was kind of true at Worlds, where Razork wasn't as good, but Humanoid was exceptional, right? We never got to see both of these guys in peak form at the same time, right? And also, well, I think Hylissang obviously was underperforming towards the end of the season too. They make this change, get in this rookie player. They then, of course, bring Reckless back in, and as far as we can tell, intentionally get rid of Upset. But Upset was he was the overall brightest spot on this roster for the summer split. So they kick arguably their worst player from last year, bring in 2 new players into the bot lane, and apparently didn't fix any of the synergy issues or Humanoid's, what I can only assume are motivation issues because of his inconsistent performance coming into this year. So the real question is, should we have had the same level of expectations on this team? Because if you can't work out Razork and Humanoid as a duo for an entire year, why should we assume that some magic wand in the offseason was waved and this problem was fixed?
Dom?
I mean, I'm pretty happy with the results because Fnatic fans literally got everything they wanted. I mean, that's the reason why. I see the fans, and the people that got all the blame were Yamato. They said Yamato's a shit coach. We need we need a better coach. They said Hilly's just inting way too much. He's just washed at this point. And Upset is bad because of his history, because players around him played bad, so he's now bad, which was the argument always against Upset. If he's really this good, then how does he keep on he plays with good players? He's 10th place when he has Alfari, when the team's just running it down. Oh, he goes to Fnatic. How come he looks good, but everyone else looks bad? It must be because he forces the whole team to play around him, which means that all the other players are forced to give up resources and they can't look as good as they are. Well, congratulations. This is what it looks like when Upset's not on the team to carry. Like, this is what it looks like. Now you can't play through anyone. Who do they play through now? Before it was, oh, they have to play through Upset because they couldn't play through the other people because there wasn't a reliable way to win the game to play through top and play through mid because Humanoid would int and like Wonder was just not able to, he's not that like super carry top laner anymore, right? He's more of the guy that's going to be relevant in the games. Like, you kind of want to leave him alone. He'll just play weak side and be good with that. So this is the way that they had to play towards Upset. With Reckless and Rux, they can't even play towards bot side. They can't even play towards bot side. And on top of that, I think that they have one of the most like criminally dramatic overreactions that we've ever seen to scrim results based on what they drafted in a literal elimination game today. It was obvious that they mind fucked themselves into believing, oh, Rux can only play engage. Like, he was playing Ashe earlier in the split and it was looking fine. It wasn't looking like it was game losing. You could still play like some enchanters. But no, we have Rux can only play engage. Oh, what is Reckless is gonna have to 1v2 the lane, so he needs to play something that he can survive on. Like, just give him Xayah. This is the mentality that they had, and it's so ill. Like, look at what they're drafting into. They drafted a full engage they drafted a full engage dash comp. So they have Azir, Wukong, and Camille into a Talia, a Lux, and a Caitlyn. Like, how fucking unplayable is that game? And the fact that any coach allowed that through just means that they're completely incompetent. I don't care if it's the most comfort thing in the world. The whole coach's job is to try to weave in that comfort into something that makes sense on the fucking stage. And if you give a team that type of draft, you cannot fucking win. Like, they even were playing okay at points in the game. But how are you supposed to win when you are that stylistically countered? It's just ridiculous, the results that they ended up having. Like, how that was the conclusion based off scrims. That was their best chance to win. It just shows that they must all think that each other are just shit players. That's the only way you get there. You're like, oh, Rux is shit. He can only play engage, so I have to play like Xayah. You have to 1-2 Xayah. Oh, they have Caitlyn Lux. Okay, draft the engage anyway. It's so ill. Like, this is ridiculous. This mindset, I mean, it just shows that they completely lost it. They lost their minds. And, you know, you saw a result of it on stage. They got stomped so hard in the first 2 games of the week and in scrims that they thought they had to do this today, and that's how it fucking looked.
Well, it's also that, I mean, they haven't really been playing meta bot lanes at all overall this week. I mean, the Xayah, that's the only time, it's the second time that Xayah has been picked in major regions outside of Hansama on G2 this spring. And I guess for me, I would rather, if you really want to just hide under a tower and have Rux play a roaming support, which again,
like Ezreal.
Exactly. Play TP Ezreal, for fuck's sake. Like, I mean, T1 did this week as well, where they tried to play roaming Twitch and then didn't put TP on Ezreal, but at least they played Ezreal, right? So I would rather you just play off meta, but you play with the TP Ezreal into the bot lane and just accept the fact that you're going to lose bot lane and probably the game, because that's not very good right now. And especially if you're trying to play into Caitlyn Lux, like, the problem with that is if you give the free lane to Caitlyn Lux, the whole idea of Caitlyn Lux is push hard, take all the plates, and then you just rotate them around, dump all of the tier 1 turrets around the map, and then you just get control of river with Caitlyn traps and like Lux AoE, right? And then you control choke points and you take objectives, right? Caitlyn and Lux is a very clear dual lane when it comes to how you're going to macro in the mid game. It's just very hard to stop if you can't stop them from pushing quickly. It's a fast push composition that then transitions into like Drake control, right? So I think that it was a tremendous mistake to play this lane. And SK had all of the tools they could possibly want. Ask yourself how Fnatic is even supposed to approach objectives when there's a Talia wall, you know, walling you off. You have Caitlyn traps, you have Lux E, right? There's no way, if you lose control of vision or you lose control of the river, to force your way back in with the composition that they have. So Fnatic, I mean, as much as people like clowned on Yamato's drafting for like letting Yuumi through in summer playoffs, he actually won that series that he put it through, and they had, you know, coherent counters. And I spent all of last year saying, I don't think Yamato's the problem. I think Yamato is actually band-aiding all of the fucking problems that they have that are unfixable, such as Humanoid and Razor's inability to talk to each other, right? He actually, like, you know, put lipstick on the pig, as it were. And now that he's gone, it's just a pig. It's just a pig.
It was the pig.
The whole team. These
Oh, okay.
players
It's a metaphorical pick. I thought it was a targeted attack. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, okay, so here's something I wanted to mention. The only two times where they played Ashe, right? And Ashe was one of the only champions that they were able to actually win a game on. They lost versus BDS in a game where Reckless played terrible, right, with Ashe. That was Ashe support, but I mean, Reckless played terrible in that game. The other game they played Ashe, they won versus Koi. And then the two times they played Yuumi were versus Mad and G2, who, for my money, are two of the best three teams within the LEC. And that was enough. Like, that was enough where they just completely ditched it. Yeah, I mean, if you're playing, like, Yuumi, what was it? Yuumi Ezreal, Yuumi Varus into fucking Draven. Or no, sorry, it was Yuumi Zeri into Draven by G2. Yeah, you're probably going to get stumped. But other teams are not going to punish you to that degree. So I don't understand why they gave up the idea of range support so hard. Like, when did they come to this idea that Rux is so fucking terrible that he can only play engage supports no matter what? Like, it was actually a no matter what mindset. Which
because they gave him Yuumi at day one of this week, and he still died. He detached in lane. It was Hilly who like flashed. It was what was it? Yeah, I remember the play. Hilly flash polymorphed while he was detached to get the auto attack, and then they bursted him down. It was sick. I was like, man, that must be super satisfying for Hilly. But like, well, shit, if he's gonna die on a champion that's untargetable, then let's just put him on engage and tanky, and if he's gonna die, let's make it worth it. But not the case there, and we see Fnatic on out.
I just simply refuse to believe that like players like Mersa, who's still willing to play like range supports, like are that much better than him. That are that next level, or it's like, oh shit, like we can never compete with that. Just put him on Nautilus every single game. Mersa's just gonna dick him down. I just don't feel like that's the realistic assessment of their strengths and weaknesses.
All right, well, Fnatic, a hugely disappointing for I guess season split for the team, for the organization, for the players, and a lot to look in the mirror and try and figure out. Because as Dom said, I really like the way that you put this, because we talk about it all the time. Coaches go on stage and then you're kind of bound to how they feel when it comes draft time, and you look at that composition and what SK was doing in the elimination game, and it was pretty trash, Monte.
I mean, I also honestly just feel like nobody on this team actually gives a shit about winning.
I just feel like they all hate each other. Like,
yes,
that's literally how it looks.
But I just don't. I cannot detect a single ounce of giving a fuck on this Fnatic roster. Like, they seem totally okay with just sliding into oblivion, and nobody seems individually motivated to perform well or pick up the slack, right? Like, who is the leader of this roster that is there to rally the troops and get the motivation back in? I just don't think that person exists.
Supposed to be humanoid, but that's not happening. And then, like, dude, I'm so tired of seeing the speech in every single Legends in Action video. Just somebody needs to like give a speech every single time. It's just the manager speech time. It's like, guys, like, I know it's not looking great, but we need to come together and we need to focus on tomorrow's. Like, none of these players need to hear that, right? Like, if you look at the players, they have 4 veterans, like pretty much mega veterans at this point. Like, Razor's been playing for a while now, right? Like, this is literally going to be his 4th year in the LEC, or is his 3rd year in the LEC? I mean, he's been there for a long period. No, it's 4th year in the LEC. You have Wonder, who's been playing forever, Reckless, who's been playing forever, Humanoid, who's now been playing since like 2019. They don't need that motivational. I don't think Rux seems like the type of guy that needs that motivational, like he's a 27-year-old rookie. Like, do we really need this talk over and over again? It just feels like people do that talk because they feel like that's in like their job title. It's like, when team is losing, do motivational speech to raise morale. Okay, check, did my job. I'm a coach. Like, let's fucking run it back. It doesn't actually do anything. You could tell the players are not responding to it.
I mean, I just think that the stakes are non-existent to these players because each and every one of them knows that they are going to get a job on a different team if this falls apart. Except for Rux. But if this thing falls apart, they're always going to have other choices of where to go. So frankly, like, maybe you just blow this shit up if you're Fnatic, honestly. Like, these pieces need to be, these pieces of this roster, these players need to be remotivated. And I think the only way you can do that is by putting them in a different environment.
What, other than winning, what do you want to see? What would you see here that would give you the impression that they're remotivated if they didn't blow up the roster? Like, because we've seen Reckless cry before. We've seen how much it meant to him. We see the speeches that are happening. What has to come together here that then makes it feel like, okay, this roster could click the way that people thought it could? Not everyone, as
Oh,
much.
this roster is doomed. You're never going to see these 5 players play another games again, like together again. This is just doomed. They all want to forget each other. Like, I mean, at minimum, I think there's going to be 2 roster changes before spring. Maybe you could get away with 1 and a role swap from Reckless to support. Maybe that would be viable. I think that's the max.
I think what's interesting to me is that we know this roster was trying to get Elyoya, and so I thought before the season that maybe Mad Lions would not have big motivation because Elyoya's on a contract year, and we know that they tried to wheel and deal with him. And so if I were him, maybe I wouldn't be the most motivated because I know I'm going to get a fat deal at the end of the year, and like fuck Mad Lions who tried to just like trade me to a bunch of different teams and then failed to do so. But Mad Lions actually has been surprisingly motivated. But also, I think if the same can be true of the teams that tried to acquire him. Like, what is Razork's motivation when you know that they tried to ditch you to pick up Elyoya, right? So I don't know. I don't know what the solution to this is. Like, I don't know if they still have Upset under contract or not, or if they released him from the contract. But clearly, like,
he's under contract.
He's under contract still, so they can bring him back.
Yeah, they can bring him back.
So bring him back.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you have it.
There have been discussions about maybe Reckless like moves to support and Upset plays AD carry. I don't know if that's.
I just don't know why Reckless needs to play in the team. Like, I don't know why is he required? Like, if he's not going to play AD carry, like if you think Upset's a better AD, like, I mean, look, to be honest, Upset was able to play fine with Rux, like at Worlds. Like the 2 games they played, that's the reason that he got Rux a job. They look so fucking good. So, I mean. I just don't know why Reckless needs to play in the team. Like, why would you not just recruit one of the supports that is actually just out there that's played support for years and years and years, especially when you're going into an engagement, right? 13.3
Treats is available too. He's a free agent.
I mean, I talk to that guy every single fucking day. Like, I mean, it's why would you want Reckless to role swap and be support over somebody who's actually a good support right now? You think he has more potential because he has like game knowledge or whatever? I don't know. I just think it's a weird move. It seems like people just want Reckless to be in the team super bad because his name is Reckless. I don't think any other player with this, like if they played the same exact split and Reckless's name was not Reckless and his name was X Matty, would anyone want Reckless to be in the team still? Reckless / X Matty, that player. No one would be asking for this guy to come back. It's just because his name is Reckless. That's it. It's name value alone.
He's a winner, man.
That name value, especially for Fnatic fans, I think holds a lot. But I agree with you. And, I don't know what's going on with Humanoid, but I can only assume it's a motivation issue because this guy, when he's at an international tournament, is a completely different player. He's a completely different player. And I can only assume that must be tied to his desire to win and his practicing of the game, because there's no other logical explanation for how he can go from the form he is in the regular season to the form we see at Worlds. What's so disappointing about Humanoid is we know how fucking good he can be.
Well, this team has a much longer break period to try and figure it out. But unfortunately, it will not be here, along with XL. So both those squads, high expectations for the winter split, and they will be the first 2 teams out in the 2023 season for the LEC. So let's turn the page on the 2 teams that are out and focus on the good. 8 teams make playoffs. That's sweet. New format. Sweet. So we've got ourselves our next segment. It's the high key, low key, no key teams of the LEC that we're excited for playoffs. All right, guys. High key, low key, no key. You already know the game. We just finished on 2 teams that didn't make the playoffs. So let's start on that end of the spectrum. Who are you no key excited to see in the LEC playoffs? A team that maybe will underperform, or a team that you don't want to see and will just waste our time?
All right, well, I'll start because I'm just a Heretics hater at this point. I've just resigned to it, so I'll just say what it is. I just don't think this team is good. I think Jankos is good. I think his team is not good. He can get them the biggest leads in the world. They throw it instantly. I would be so trigger jungling for this team. I think maybe that's why I don't like Heretics so much, is because I see the game through Jankos' lens, and like through a jungler's eye, right? And when I'm looking at what Jankos is doing, I'm like, this guy is still fucking good, but his team can't carry the leads that he gives them. And I just think that they're going to be easy to solve. Like, I think they drafted pretty well considering the players they have, but I just don't see them being able to get out. I would be very surprised if they're able to get out. I think they should be the worst team in their group.
Monty.
I mean, I tend to agree with the easy choice is Astralis, right? Because they have the worst overall record. But I think that is a bit of a cop out because at least I think Astralis has grown a little bit towards the end of the season. But I think Heretics is definitely a best of one team, and I think that they are not going to have the depth in terms of strategy in order to actually do damage within a best of three. And I think that's probably why we saw them get selected, right? Uh, within their group as opposed to the other teams. Like, I think, okay, they're in this group with what, Koi, right? Koi, I think, is based on the veterancy of their players, was going to be much more potentially damaging to Vitality. And I think SK is actually has shown that they have some pretty solid fundamentals, whereas Heretics just seems like pure chaos a lot of the time. And so I would not be confident in them making a deep run. I also think that when you look at Heretics, they did win 4 games and they did actually beat Koi. But for the most part, they've only beaten 2 of their wins were against Excel and Fnatic, who are not even within the top 8. And their only other win was versus Astralis in the first week of play. And I think Astralis has developed pretty significantly since that time. So I haven't seen the necessary growth in this team to make me confident that they are actually going to be doing too much.
All right. That is our no keys. Let's take a look at our low key. Give me a team that you are excited about, but not too excited about that you're going to jump for joy or might surprise some people. Monty, I'll go with you first on this one.
I think it has to be probably SK or BDS. At least with BDS, they have had some real bright spots, especially with Crowny, and I think Shio has been a somewhat interesting player to watch. And they don't give up. Like, you can tell that this team actually really cares about winning these games and is very motivated and fighting hard throughout their series. They had a tough week, but those losses were to G2 and Vitality, which is something that you expect. And the week before, they went 3-0 and took out Mad Lions. So this is a team that I think is coming in relatively hot after a very struggling start to the split. And you can say the same thing about SK, but I think at least BDS has a little bit more flash and excitement than SK does, especially in the bot lane.
The Crowny resurgence has been a lot of fun to watch. Dom, where are you looking?
I'm low-key excited for Koi. I think that even though they got stomped by G2, they did look a little bit better this week. And I think that their team is going to be decent in best of threes. I think they're going to be able to grind out teams. They play long games. They play low kill games that are macro intensive. If they just start laning a little bit better, I feel like the team is actually pretty scary. And I think they're harder to ban out than other teams. Like, I guess, when I look at BDS, for example, I think that when teams are prepping for a best of 3 and they're they're going to heavily target Adam's champion pool and they're going to remove these conditions from the game. I think you ban out Wukong versus Sheo every single time, and then you play the game from there. I think that that's way, way, way easier than attacking a team like Koi or Mad or Vitality or G2 or even SK for that matter. So I guess my no key would be Koi. I mean, I still think that they have the people there to make for a solid team. I think that they can get out of the group.
All right. And then finally, who are we high key excited about? Let's take a look at those top teams in the league, or maybe it'll surprise us. Dom, let's start with you.
Yeah, I guess I think there's 2 options here, right? It's just Vitality or G2. I think that those teams look like they have the most firepower in the league. Obviously, Vitality and G2 have both played some awful games. But I mean, if I'm going with one, I guess I'll go with Vitality. I think that Photon has really impressed me. I think he's been the best top laner in LEC, by far. I think he's just a next level.
It's crazy how much confidence he has as a new player speaking a different language than the rest of the roster, and the coordination he has. He's been great.
Yeah, he's been really fucking good. So, I mean, Bo ran it down the last 2 games, but the first 7 were fucking immaculate. So I would say that just overall, I think that this roster is still the one. They're the team that I picked to win before, right? So I'm not jumping off the hype train. I thought they would actually have a pretty bad start to spring. I thought they would be kind of a middling team that would get it together as time went on, because they have people speaking different languages and they have, players that are playing competitive for the first time in years in tier 1 or never playing tier 1 before. But yeah, I mean, I was hyped for them before. I'm still hyped for them.
Yeah. Do we have a team that's kind of like that? I guess Mad Lions is on a 3-game winning streak, so it's like that.
I was gonna pick. I was gonna
go
pick
there.
Mad Lions just because, not that I think that they are going to be better than Vitality or G2 when it comes to best of threes. And people might say, "Oh, well, Monty, they beat G2 today." Well, I don't know what the fuck G2 was doing with that composition. I think maybe they experimented a little bit too hard there. G2. I don't expect them to run that back. And even if they do, in a best of three, it's kind of irrelevant. But if anything, G2 has just a ton of flexibility, right, which allows them to be that kind of crazy and experimental. But for me, Mad Lions, as I said earlier, I thought this team was going to come into this split being pretty down in the dumps because it was very clear that they didn't want to end up with this particular roster based on all of the offseason rumors. But, jokes aside, like Elyoya and Niski do have pretty good synergy. It's what really powered Mad Lions through the summer split last year. And I have to say, I expected the Carzzy Hylissang experiment to go real badly. But it hasn't. They've looked actually pretty darn good. And so for me, I think that Mad Lions is potentially has some pretty high upside. Maybe they won't be the champions, but obviously in a league where we thought XL and Fnatic would be better than this and Mad Lions might be mid-tier, it is a really pleasant surprise to see them kind of return to an upper tier form.
Was it you, Monty, or someone tweeted out, surprise, the players with the lowest amount of deaths in bot lane?
That was me. I tweeted that.
Yeah. What was they have the lowest amount of deaths?
So Mad Lions, up until I think it was week 3, day 2 is when I took that. They actually had the lowest amount of deaths per game average, and they have Carzzy and Hylissang on the team. I think that's crazy because normally so they're averaging 9 deaths a game. And I think Hylissang's average last split was 11 or 12. So, that was crazy. I don't even know how that's possible. Somebody must be going for negative death totals to balance it out.
Yeah, definitely something that was, I think, surprising by everyone. I'm looking through it right now to see how many deaths have happened throughout. And these stats are not correct. They're taking averages here, but it did look like
Carzzy is the lowest deaths of ADCs at 13, compared to Patrick at 36, who is number 1. So he is, about 1/3 of Patrick's. And it supports, we have Hylissang at 20. He is 3rd least, and Junghoon is 1st at 29. So not that big of a difference between supports, but
yeah,
definitely
I've seen him die 20. I
here.
swear I've seen him die 20 times in a game before. So 20 times in a split, that's crazy.
All right. Well, there you have it. Our high key, low key, no key suggestions.
Worth noting that does not include the last game of the day today. So the stats have not been entirely updated at this point in time. But
they won that game, so it probably didn't change much.
Yeah. So for you guys at home watching this, let us know in the comments below. Who do you think are your high key picks? We'll just go high key picks to come out on top in the LEC group stage. Sorry, I know I said playoffs earlier, but the group stage for this new playoff format. By the way, again, just being on the 3rd week and all of a sudden having all these matches have stakes, feel hype is great. I love this. Again, Monte, I know you've been around a format like this before. I just haven't. And it's really cool to feel this so early on. It feels bad for, I guess, XL and Fnatic and the management, the organization.
Just kick out the garbage, man. Take out the trash, put it in the dumpster. Let's
you
move
feel
on.
Bad for all the orgs. I remember when they used to eliminate Dignitas. You're oh, I feel bad for them. It's dGon, they've won.
I feel bad for Toby. I feel bad for Toby. I feel bad for the people behind the scenes that are well, now what do I do with my day, with my work? That feels bad. You can't just relax.
It's literally just vacation for a month. It's chill for them. As long as they keep their job, it's chill.
It's not.
You don't go to Worlds, you're sad for a week, and then then you realize,
and then you get paid for not working for 2 months.
Yeah, and then I'm wait, I have a 4.5 month paid vacation. Hell yeah, let's fucking go.
You don't go to Worlds, and then you wonder if you have your job for about 2 months, and then you're okay, I'm okay now, and then you get fired. That's what happens. That's what could happen. And so,
you signed up for fucking sports, dude. You know what you're getting. It's true in professional sports as well. So it is very difficult for me to, dGon, I love that you care about people so much,
Ew.
but at the end of the day, you got to look at it from the perspective of, the fans only care if you're performing, right?
This is true. This is
That's
It's top 8, man. Like if you can't make top 8 in 9 games, it is what it is. You probably don't deserve to play anymore.
I
Like,
agree. That's
just
why the
play-
format's good. That's why the format is good.
It's not like we're out here in some cutthroat
You get
format.
9 games to be in the top 80%. Like, how forgiving do you want this to be, dGon?
No. I love
Yeah.
it. That's what I'm saying. I love it. I said it kept it compelling and whatnot. It just
Yeah, like we're literally trying to just be in like the fucking 30th percentile. Like imagine if you're in like the 30th percentile of anything. You're like, okay, we're chilling.
All right. So actually, you guys brought up a good point, or I guess Dom brought up a good point. Let's move it to teams that are struggling. Back on over to the LCS. It's
Oh, boy.
time for another episode of Keep or Kick. This time, you keep a Dignitas at 0-4 or Golden Guardians at 0-4. All right, keep or kick time. You've got the veteran stud roster that just hasn't seemed to be able to put it together yet in terms of Dignitas. There's a lot of championships there. There's a lot of pedigree there. There's a lot of experience there. You mix it in with Spawn, who's new. They haven't had their full roster yet, with Biofrost still filling in right now instead of Ignar. So you're getting even more experience there. On the opposite side, Golden Guardians, they didn't have their starting mid laner to kick off the season. Young was in. He did okay, but they still lost. They've been in a lot of scraps, but still sit at 0-4. LeTigress kind of got worked this week as well. That wasn't great for him. What are we doing here in terms of keep or kick? Who are you keeping, Monte?
Look, I think there's only one answer to this, which is that you keep Golden Guardians. Like, Gory at least has had some like halfway decent performances. Like, I think he held his own in an acceptable manner when they played FlyQuest earlier this week. And at least there are times where it felt like there was at least a glimmer of hope for them to win the game against a team that I think is pretty clearly the best team within this league.
Mm-hmm.
So, as opposed to Dignitas, where they have had, I think, a tough schedule. So we have to keep that in mind. I mean, the teams they played are CLG, FlyQuest, 100 Thieves, and EG. These are all teams that are at the very top of, like, in the top 5 as it stands right now. So their opponents have been harder. But damn, dude, some of these matches have just been an absolute slaughter. Watching Prince versus Spawn was physically pain-inducing. And I do not think that this roster has the skill or talent remaining to really do anything, because who's going to step up? To be blunt, Jensen wasn't good in summer of last year. And if Berserker hadn't hard carried C9 through the playoffs, he would have looked pretty bad. His champion pool was extremely small. Bringing Armut in is such a weird decision for this team.
It's not a weird decision. It's Dignitas. I mean, they brought Blue in last year. Like they literally just have a former coach of TCL, so they're just picking up people that played in TCL. That's it. Like It's just simple as.
And then, the younger players like Spawn just are not working, right? Like he is a bottom tier ADC within this league. So I do not think that this team has really any potential, because the problem with Dignitas is their only hope was that they were going to be strong with some veteran players right out of the gate in spring, because their ceiling was very low, right? We thought that maybe their floor would be high, but their ceiling is very low. So if they can't win now, holy shit, it's only going to get worse. It is only going to get worse from here.
The addition of Ignar is not going to change anything for either one of you guys to help get Spawn somewhere there.
I think, but it will help, especially if we move into an engaged support meta, which Ignar has. Yep. So that may help a little bit. Okay, but I just don't. I don't think it's gonna like rocket them up the standings or anything like that. And just from the eye test, Golden Guardians has looked much better in their games.
Yes, they have. Again, except LeTigress just getting wrecked last week. That one was tough. That one was tough. Again, the narrative on the broadcast was like, "Hey, look, we want to build around the guys that we have and just put talent around them." So you got LeTigress there. They feel like Stixxay just hasn't had a team around him in a long time that has allowed him to execute, which that one I don't agree with. I think Stixxay is not that good anymore, but I did kind of buy into it with LeTigress, and then he got destroyed, just pulled apart in a way.
Only players that look good are the new players that they got. River at the end of last year and Corey, like that. I mean, Huhi as well. I mean, the players that weren't on the team previously are the ones that look the best. Like, big surprise. I don't know. Never listen to anything Golden Guardians says. I mean, it's so obvious that they just have, they make their decisions and then they try to phrase it in the best way possible. Ever since they did their rebuilding roster where they were going to develop talent and they brought in a bunch of rookies, we're bringing in 2 players from Maryville University. It's like that's that's like under amateur. So you went from collegiate tier 4, and we're not going to go tier 4 to like tier 2 in academy or tier 4 to like tier 3. They went straight tier 4 to tier 1. They ran it down for an entire split. They kicked them off the roster. They just have new players like come in. It's just what Golden Guardians always does. So you can't listen to anything they say about that. That being said, I think that I think River's legit. I think he's really good. He's somebody who you can't even tell if he would be like a top 3 jungler if he was on the right team. I think if he was playing with a team like FlyQuest, they'd probably still win a fucking title, right? Like, he is just a good fucking player. And yeah, I mean, I think that they've looked okay in their games. I think they're pretty underrated because, like Monte said, strength of schedule is extremely important here. They literally just played all the best teams. So now we're going to see them against CLG. They're considered an underdog to CLG, which I think that's like a 50-50 game. I expect the Golden Guardians to win. I don't know. I think that this team is just better than Dignitas. Dignitas look like a real bottom team. I mean, they actually saw Armut play last year, and they picked him up. They actually were like, he's worth an import slot. Import him immediately to our team. Like, we need him as one of the main imports on our team. Like, you got 2 of them. You used 1 on Armut.
Yeah, 2 of them because, again, Sator and Jensen are considered North American. It feels like you could make a different type of roster than what they ended up with doing, but Dig still trying to do the most with the least and end up just with the least.
I mean, it's incredible because Santorin and Jensen for so long have been crucial pieces in the LCS import domino game. And by that, I mean, the way that GMing has gone in LCS is that these players are super valuable because once you get one of them or both of them, you know which positions you need to import for. And so that causes kind of a domino effect within all of the teams where if these guys are locked up, then everybody else knows that now I have to import a mid laner, right? Or, I have to import a jungler. So them being residents is actually huge. And you should be able to build a competitive team around these 2 players because of who it frees up. So getting Armut in is just a mystery.
I have a legitimate question. I wonder how much like Armut's salary is, and then I would compare that to Chasey's and Photon's. I want to see, like, is he getting paid like that much less than Photon and Chasey? Because those are like other people that are imported. They were rookie talents essentially. Like, I can't imagine that the third option for Vitality is like a multi-million-dollar player. So I just don't even know if do they not have money and was Armut just dirt cheap, or did they actually just do their research? They like had their scouting team all get together in a room and they like crunch the numbers. They're like, yep, Armut's our guy.
Yeah, that's a question for GM Bakery. I feel like we've had lots of questions for GM Bakery, right? It was the Huni signing as well coming on in. There was a lot of questions for Bakery, and if I'm gonna play, devil's advocate with the information that we know, he must be cheap. He must be cheap. There was a big correction in the salaries across the LCS, which meant the teams that were on budget teams, Dignitas, Golden Guardians, and previously FlyQuest, lol, had to go even more budget, I'd imagine. And, because they're still going to be at the bottom of the league in terms of spending. Oh, and Immortals, that's the other one. And so it's kind of weird, too, that they imported Armut as well when you knew that Ignar was going to be your support. You could have gotten another Korean, a fellow Korean, but instead they went with this roster and it's struggling. And it looks like all of us would keep Golden Guardians and kick Dignitas and wait to see how River, Gory, and the rest of the squad here at Golden Guardians do as we move closer and closer to playoffs. All right, y'all. That is Keeper Kick. Finally, to close out the weekend, let's take a look at a certified banger. It was the match of the week. You should go back, watch. get some delicious tasting League, and it'll tickle your palate in one way or the other. And this one comes from Dom, so let's get into it. Certified banger. All right, Dom, go ahead.
Yeah, certified banger of the week, JDG versus Nip, and mainly it's just the Ruler show. I feel like Ruler is just playing on such a high level right now. He's been so good immediately, and I really just like the roster construction of JDG. They kept the pieces that made their like team fighting and setup good. So they have Missing, Kanavi, and obviously 369, who, you know, for my money at Worlds is one of the top laners in the world. I know they lost to T1 and everyone immediately said, oh, Zeus was better. But if you go back and watch that series, it was actually pretty close between both of them. And they just simply upgraded their AD carry. They went from Hope, who was like a decent AD carry for LPL. So he wasn't bad. I mean, I think that narrative was too much. He was probably like a top 6 AD carry in LPL. And they went to literally one of the 2 best AD carries in the world, coming out of last year, which are Ruler and Viper, and we're in the same meta. So Ruler Zeri, how fucking good. That was the reason why everyone thought he was the best like in the world by far. People thought Prince was good, and they're like, yeah, but he, like, let's be real, he's nowhere close to Ruler. Give Ruler like first team all pro, put him on all the fucking accolades. And he had a good Worlds as well. I mean, he wasn't able to dominate people as hard, but I really think it was the collapse of other members of Gen G that kept Ruler from being able to win that World Championship. So he looks really good, and I just think that the team like gels together really well. So it's been good to see them pop off. I mean, the level of precision that Ruler has mechanically, I think, is the most impressive part about his gameplay. The criticism I've always had for Ruler is that I think that he's a little bit overly safe. He's more of like the reckless style AD carry, as opposed to somebody who's going to like go in and try to like win the whole fight alone, but might just like eat a skill shot and die. Ruler almost never fucks up mechanically, which is one of his huge selling points. And if your team is just people that are going to start good fights for you, who would you rather have to fit into this team than Ruler? So this was just a Ruler show. I mean, he had another show today, but it was versus a slightly weaker opponent. That being said, this guy's on form, and yeah, that's why it's our certified banger.
Yeah, and sometimes these certified bangers are going to be pretty one-sided games, as you know, this best of 3 proved, but it also shows why JDG is creating so much excitement. And I can't wait in a couple weeks for when we get the JDG versus Top Esports best of 3, because that is going to be absolutely amazing. But as far as this team goes, you look at the way that JDG entered Worlds last year, and they upgraded arguably their 2 weakest players with Knight and Ruler. And what's so amazing about this series is Ruler and Missing play Zeri and Yuumi in both games. In the first game, they play it into Caitlyn and Ashe. And the second game, they play it into Lucian and Nami. And they just devastate both times. In the second game, there's an absolutely insane mechanical outplay by Ruler where he's sidestepping Nami bubbles and Silas stuns and everything like that. That is extremely fun to watch, where he kills 3 members of NIP. And he only has flash, doesn't even have his barrier up. So this is a really, really fun team to watch. And even though we've only seen the 3 best of 3s so far, because they haven't had that many games in the schedule.
And bangers coming up, by the way, just so you guys know, they play RNG this week, and then they play Weibo, and Weibo's considered a top 3 team this split. So they have bangers coming up this week.
Yeah. And Weibo had a bit of a rough match, I think, versus Billy this past week. What?
No, I think that Billy's another team that's like top 5 right now. Sure. They look like they're top 5. So like that loss to me, losing 2-1 to Billy doesn't really change my opinion that much of like Weibo.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, the JDG, I think this is a team that you guys should be on the lookout for, and definitely has like world/MSI potential. Obviously, with the names on this roster, you would assume that. But what's impressive to me is their coordination already looks on point. You know, Ruler didn't go into this team speaking Chinese, and for them to be this cohesive already is really impressive, and it's going to be really scary once we hit international tournaments.
Yeah, they're still mid-game translating, like where they'll have a fight start, and then you'll hear Kanavi just start speaking in Korean, like telling Ruler, like, hey, this is what we're going to do in this fight. That being said, like, look, if the fight looks good enough, I don't think that Ruler needs, you know, he doesn't need any instruction on how to kill everyone, you know, like if
it is nice when you have an AD carry, because their job is perhaps the least reliant on the mid-game communication.
Yep. Do damage, don't die. Do damage, don't die. All right. Well, there you have it. the certified banger of the week, JDG versus NIP, the ruler show, as we're going to call this one. Guys, another one done and dusted after a very, I guess, crazy in a different kind of way week in the league ecosystem. We've got LEC group play, and again, not playoffs, group play with those best of threes coming on up for the 8 teams. We have LCS week number 3. A lot of the undefeated teams all got knocked off, except for FlyQuest, who won their big battle against Cloud9 so convincingly. They'll continue to push on over there in the LCK. Monte, what do we have coming up this week that's catching your eye and where people can catch you?
Well, I think Dom brought up some really good points about JDG's upcoming schedule, especially versus RNG, who have now re-signed Ming and Gala. So for those of you guys who may have been following along with some of the potential, like, I don't know, contract drama that was happening over there about why they weren't playing. So they actually have a functional roster at this point in time. LCK this next week, there is going to be Gen G versus KT, which is probably one of the more interesting matchups. KT versus D Plus is probably the other one that fans might be interested in. But for the most part, a lot of these matchups this next week in LCK are not exactly top tier.
What about Damwon versus Hanwha Life? I feel like that's the banger. Isn't that the best match?
D Plus was Hanwha Life. I mean, Hanwha did beat T1, but T1 looked pretty sus in that one. And even Faker and Bengi said afterwards that they were experimenting and didn't prepare very much for that match. Look, I hope that's good. I hope that match is good. But D Plus has been dropping the ball recently, and I'm still not entirely sold on Hanwha Life being good.
Yeah. The Freaks were able to steal one. I love it.
Clid was better this last week. Clid was better, to Clid's credit. And if you guys are curious about how Hanwha Life is doing, because we didn't really talk about them on this show, they went back to like playing Kingen on tanks in top lane and resetting to Clid kind of covering to keep bot lane safe and then transitioning into 5v5 front to back team fighting in the mid and late game. And, you know, it worked for them. And so, like, if you're a team that has a lot of strong players on it, but is suffering potentially from synergy issues, I think it's smart for them to go back to basics, as it were, and just try and play a longer game and rely on front to back team fighting. So maybe they're kind of developing that style. They certainly seemed more cohesive.
Dom, you brought up a couple of the big matches that are coming up, especially for JDG. Is there anything else that we should keep an eye on for the LCK? I mean, LPL.
No, I mean, I think those are the matches of the week. I think that those are the biggest matches that we have in LPL. I mean, JDG playing versus Weibo, I think is the most hype one. From most people's perspective, I think it was a top like 3 teams. And then I guess the other one that you could keep your eye out for is BLG versus EDG, because BLG is top 5 and people think that EDG is top 5 as well. EDG just beat RNG. RNG did look rough, but I think EDG looked better than people expected. I know people aren't really sold on Fofo being the mid laner for the team, but the rest of the team looks functional. For me though, like you guys know, I'm kind of an OMG fan. The match that I'm looking forward to the most is actually OMG LNG. Like, these are the ones that I think are like the biggest bangers in LPL, actually. It's not the top teams playing each other. It's like when the middle tier teams play each other, because you get some fucking crazy ass games with middle tier like LPL teams. So OMG LNG, OMG, they're my boys, obviously, and they've upgraded their lineup. They had Cold before, and now they have PP God, who's been playing for them. He came over from V5. He's pretty successful over there. And then LNG's been looking better than expected. LNG obviously is where Scout is playing now. Scout and Tarzan are the cornerstones of that team. So yeah, those are the matches that I'm looking forward to over in LPL.
All right, well, there you have it, guys.
Well, LCS also surprisingly has probably some pretty good matches this week.
C9EG,
FlyQuest EG, right? FlyQuest 100 Thieves.
So they're going up against 2 3-1 teams. So yeah. I was like, did they just play a bunch?
I think 100 Thieves is a 3-1 team based off strength of schedule, though.
Oh yeah, they're frauds for sure. They're frauds.
Yeah. To me, it seems like there's a very like clear top 3 right now in LCS. FlyQuest, you've got FlyQuest, C9, EG. Yeah, those are the teams that look the best. Even though EG didn't have a great week 1. You know they're going to get it together. That's an NA team. Like when you have the someday FBI roster, you know it's not going to be that great internationally, but that's a team that will normally perform pretty well in LCS. That's an LCS team.
I like how you call it that roster.
Yep. That roster.
right.
I mean, that is a good LCS level team. Like Vulcan stomps LCS. FBI is good in LCS. Someday is always good in LCS. These players just know how to get it done domestically.
This is true. All right. There you have it, guys. Episode 2 of the year now done in the books. You can catch more content here on Last Free Nation. Dom and Monte have been doing a ton of co-streaming, so make sure to check out their Twitch channel.
I'm doing VOD reviewing, well. To be clear.
Dom's doing the live streaming. Monte's doing VOD reviewing, and has had a lot of the funny clips come out on TikTok. So if you like the short form content, check that out.
Also, I recorded the first Last Free Nation top 5 plays of the week, of the professional scene this week, because part of what I'm doing is I'm trying to curate all of the regions by doing the VOD reviews and watching the bangers only, right? So I'm going to put out top 5 plays as well as top 10 global power rankings starting next week.
Oh, I got one for you for next week. Have you seen the sword art play from today?
I have not seen this. Is it a top fail?
No, I mean it's just one of the best plays I've ever seen. Here, you can watch it right now.
I want to see.
I want to see your live reaction. I just posted it in the in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh God, I feel so bad for Sword Art because I have such fond memories of him, right, as a player and like his many good years in Taiwan.
Fan. Like as a TSM hater, he's one of the best saboteurs of TSM in the history of their organization. He's my favorite, dude.
Did you see it? I think
oh my God.
Yeah, we heard Monte's reaction.
That is tragic. So we also might do top 5 fails, in which case the backwards Caitlyn net may be one of those.
Yeah.
But anyway, you guys can look for all that content both on YouTube and TikTok. So be aware that we are also moving into doing some of these clips and providing that to you, because nobody is making top 5 professional play clips for some reason. That's just not a thing that exists.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Last Free Nation, we set sail. Hop on the boat now, because we are pumping out the content for you all at home. Thank you so much for watching this week. If you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Put the comments below on what you want us to talk on next week for some big talking points, and we'll get at it. All right. Have a great day. See ya.